Good afternoon. With all of you still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I can tell that you truly believe in the need for creating transformational change. You're probably already involved in creating it. But transformational change can be daunting, and it's sometimes possible to believe that transformational change can be made by those that have the most resources and the most money. Now, I happened to work for two such organizations that did have a lot of money and a lot of resources. And I helped them launch a number of brands around the world. And what I discovered was a little surprising. By the late 90s, I discovered that a lot of the products that my colleagues and I launched would get quickly copied by not just the other Fortune 100 companies, but by store brands and even tiny entrepreneurs. And that would lead to an inevitable decline in margins and earnings per share, and then Wall Street would be on our back. Now we needed to find a way to accelerate innovation, cut costs, still try to grow, and lay off people. Now, that wasn't fun. So I got into thinking about how could I change this? How could we build something more transformative, something that would really be meaningful and not be that susceptible to commoditization? So I started looking for companies that could inspire me, that I could take some learnings from, that did things differently than what I had done perhaps, and what the rest of my colleagues at these big companies had done. And I found these brands that passed what we at Blue Earth now call the tattoo test of Transcendent Brands. Brands that achieve such deep connection with consumers and human beings that they're willing to take those brands and print them on their own skin. Now, that's a pretty extreme version of loyalty and trust. I recall this one occasion when I saw this beautiful silver Mercedes SL55 AMG. I think it cost more than $150,000. I never bothered to find out how much it cost because I could never afford one. But that car drove by too fast for me to get a picture of a 2-cent Apple sticker on it. But I did catch up with these guys. This family has 3 stickers on the background. Now, a brand that is transcendent is this kind of demonstrates how a brand logo can be used by people on things that the brand doesn't produce. That is truly a brand that's transcended its category to the extent that competition can have better products at lower prices, and these brands still don't suffer. So let's take a quick look at how these brands perform in financial terms. Pretty good. It's not surprising, probably, but what was surprising is, how do these brands do that? Is it an incredible amount of investment, perhaps in marketing and innovation and distribution? Turns out, if you look at their cost as a percentage of their revenue, it's actually not much higher. In some cases, it's dramatically lower. So if they're not outspending their competition, and money is not what's driving this, then what is? Perhaps these brands were created by using something like great industry expertise, perhaps it's incredible amounts of distribution strength, heavy advertising, big investments. As I studied these brands, I realized that that's actually a myth. It wasn't any of these factors that truly differentiate these great brands, these truly transcendent brands, from what I jokingly call merely great brands. Because the other brands that are really great, brands like Tide or Sprite, these are pretty great brands, but they don't quite get to the same level. So how are these brands formed? As I started studying these brands, and I was really looking for how were they created, how were they incubated, how were they scaled, what were these folks doing that is different than I had been trained by some of the best companies on the planet to do, and I couldn't do it. It's like being a really fast runner and never making it to the Olympics. How did these guys do it? As I studied them, I found that they were all small entrepreneurs, going back to what Hunter was talking about. They were, in fact, not even really entrepreneurs as much as they were hobbyists. And their hobbies created what are now globally transcendent brands. And what causes that to happen? As I analyzed it, I realized that it is a myth that it takes a lot of money and a lot of resources to start transformational change. In fact, it might even be an excuse if you don't have the resources. I found that there were 6 disciplines that were common to all these brands, and I'm going to walk you through these disciplines with examples of how these brands employed these disciplines in creating this incredible global transcendent brands that truly created movements in themselves. The first discipline is about purpose. Now, purpose is quite fashionable. In fact, there are even some conferences that are targeted at purpose. But having just a purpose that's not well calibrated and well sharpened is like having a great compass that is a few degrees off in its calibration. In a long journey, you could find yourself miles away from where you intended to be. So how do you sharpen your purpose? The first step that I found, remember I talked about these entrepreneurs as being people that were hobbyists. They truly loved what they do. If you don't truly love what you do, if you're not thriving at what you do, it's going to be hard for you to really sustain the kind of energy you need to create that transformational change. And all of these folks really had a great love for what they did. So if you look at Steve Jobs, we know that he loved art and he loved creativity. And he wanted to promote that in everything he did. But the problem with great passion is if it does not have the yin-yang of compassion, if you merely try to do what you think is right, that's hubris. But how do you do something that other people need? And how do you intuit that? Now, Steve Jobs was fortunate or incredibly intuitive, but he did figure out that human beings are feeling animals that think, not thinking animals that feel. Why can't we all be greatly creative, and why can't we all be incredibly good with technology? Is because after the age of 7, most of us are told that you're not an artist, even if you could be. That's bred into our society. We are technophobic. We don't like to be made fools of when we deal with technology. And that's one of the great things about Apple. It truly understands that real emotional need of human beings. But the last is really where I found it most interesting. I found that these transcendent brands actually help to create mutual fulfillment of the innovator and the person that they seek to serve. And it's that fulfillment at the highest levels of Maslow's hierarchy that really creates the beginnings of what can become a true global movement. And that leads to what I call a sharpened, a truly clarified true purpose. And that can be articulated in something really simple. Like, for example, unleash people's creativity and productivity. How simple and clear is that? Let me give you an example of the Atlanta Center for Self-Sufficiency. It's a venerable organization from Atlanta that seeks to help end the cycle of homelessness in that city. We found that their results were pretty good, but not transformational. After about 90 days of putting people into jobs, we found that half of them were back on the street. So ACSS went through a process of recalibrating their true purpose and getting it really sharp. And they realized that even the homeless don't just need a job. They too need purpose, and they too need passion. And when that occurred to them, they recalibrated the true purpose to be around unleashing the potential of people to thrive in life. They, in fact, stopped using the word homeless. And that, when they say people, they mean donors, volunteers, employees, and the homeless. And the outcome of that was substantially better. So after 90 days, we found that about more than 75% of the people stayed in their jobs because now they had something to look forward to. But that result actually continued beyond 90 days. It went to 180 days and 270 days, and we're still counting, and we're approaching a year now where the results are over 75%. So this is a classical case where a great passion and purpose, once calibrated, can really unleash its full potential for change. I want to go back to the Apple example to communicate the second discipline of transcendent organizations. Given that Apple wants to unleash people's creativity, and it understands the deep human need to overcome creative inadequacy and also overcome that fear of technology, how do you do that? As engineers and innovators and business managers, we all tend to quickly gravitate to, okay, so what's the technology and what's the logic of how I solve this? The fact is, as I said, human beings are feeling animals that think. We react to things at an autonomic nervous system level. And because of that, understanding that and being able to solve that problem is really the key. And what Apple does beautifully is it seduces us into feeling confident. Before you know it, you're touching the products, you're making movies, downloading music, and making beautiful presentations. And that is truly the power of Apple. And finding ways to achieve that outcome is truly the role of innovation. And so the tangible barriers to helping people feel confident is how do you overcome complex hardware and software for Apple. They created an innovation brief, which was about intuitive solutions that help make creativity and productivity simply joyful. Now, I want to say this. This is a paradox. At one fell swoop, this kind of an innovation brief focuses attention and makes it incredibly disciplined, but at the same time, it unleashes creativity. And that model has led them to create a pipeline of transformational innovation. So I want to make a quick point about this, which is it's not about technology IQ. It's actually about innovation EQ. Brands are, like human beings, need to have strong emotional quotient. And these brands really do. Apple was not the first to create MP3 players. In fact, they were not the second or the third. Harley-Davidson does not have the world's best technology. In fact, that might be an understatement. But it is truly created results that the US auto industry would dream about having if they could, because Harley has beaten back competition from Japan and Germany like no other auto company from the US has. So now that you've got a great product idea, you've got great innovation, you've got a holistic value proposition, and you're clear about your true purpose, you're left with this minor problem of getting the world to adopt your great idea. How do you do that? Remember, big things start small. Big companies, and even small entrepreneurs, well-funded by VCs, tend to want to go to where the market is biggest. So they target the middle of the innovation adoption curve. That's a big mistake, because what you really need to do if you are trying to create transformational change is go to where the need is the greatest. And when you do that, you create the evangelists for your brand and your idea. And by empowering them with the right language, with the right infrastructure, with the right growth models, you can create a movement that can truly transcend the globe. And that's actually exactly what happened with all these brands. Let me start quickly. Apple, because they were small entrepreneurs, they had no choice. They couldn't go to all the biggest chains that they could have. So it was an advantage for them retrospectively to be small and have no money. So they started truly building their evangelists by cultivating people at the bike shop, for example. Nike, Phil Knight sold his shoes from the back of a pickup truck and university track and field events across the country. Coca-Cola and Elixir, what better place to launch than in a pharmacy? If you look through this whole model, you're now at the stage where you need to figure out how am I going to get my business and my product or my idea or my solution into the right channels. You need to evolve a purposeful business model. Coca-Cola wanted to put Coke within an arm's reach of desire, and they created this incredible system that is represented by the big red truck. A whole 100 years after Coca-Cola was launched, a tiny company out of Austria created this brand called Red Bull, and they now dominate the most profitable segment of the beverage industry. And how have they managed to keep back the behemoths of the beverage and food industry? The Cokes, the Pepsis, they've all tried to get into this profitable segment, but Red Bull still dominates because they cultivated their transcendent curve in nightclubs. What better place to launch a product that doesn't let you sleep at night but a nightclub? And the little minis that go up and down those little narrow lanes do something that the big truck cannot. This is a quick story about a Native American tribe in northern Minnesota. They've suffered from a business model where their pristine fish that is cultivated in a sacred lake is sold for $25 to consumers, but the fisherman makes just $1.50. This native tribe has rebranded themselves under the Akina brand, and they are eliminating the middlemen and creating a new model of creating holistic food systems and solutions that are truly adherent to their ancient philosophies and producing direct to consumers, so that instead of hiring 9 people at minimum wage, they're hiring 50 people at thriving wage, where they're doing things that are truly sustainable and true to their purpose and to their heritage. So now comes the communication piece. If you want, most big companies would like to find what is their point of difference and how can they hawk it as aggressively as possible to all the media that they can afford. Well, that's a good way to commoditize your brand really quickly. Great brands, transcendent brands, have a call to action. They tell you the highest truth. Pepsi asks people to take the taste challenge. Coke asks people to sing in perfect harmony. Computer companies tell you how many bytes and processors they have. Apple tells you to think different. Shoe companies tell you what great technology they have. Nike tells you to just do it. A little Belgian company started by a naturalist was selling natural born chocolates till he realized that what he really wanted to do was help people to savor nature and life. So he says, savor life now. The sixth discipline is really about how do you really channel all the 5 disciplines and codify them inside your company. It's quite easy to do when you're small. It's quite hard to do when you're big. Big companies really need to realize that big things don't start big. That defies the laws of physics, biology, and social movements. So if you can really nurture transcendent entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship inside your organizations, you can actually find that it's a faster way to create transformational new brands. And that is really a key component of the 6th component. Now, last but not the least, I want to talk about championing holistic sustainability. This is a discipline which is not connected to how brands became transcendent in the past, but how I believe brands will become transcendent in the future. And I hope that to see brands like Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, Nutri, Akina maybe, Warby Parker, you talked about Method. These are brands that are really true to themselves in a way that is really powerful. And at the same time, they are promoting sustainability, and that is truly the future. So in ending, remember, big things start small. So I hope that you will all continue to dream big, but really start tiny. There's no hurry. And if you can really calibrate your true purpose and scale with integrity, you will find yourself creating the change that we all are hoping to see in this world. Thank you so much. Take care.